Earthquakes. It's the disaster you've prepared for all your life in California. But another disaster has become just as dangerous and deadly. Wildfires are roaring through California at an alarming rate.
I have not seen fires burning like this in my entire career.
Destroying homes and lives.
We ended up with just the clothes on our back, which for me was my bathrobe. It's the most terrifying experience of my life.
Tonight, the battle on the ground and in the air. What's in store in the coming years? Who pays? And most importantly, what you can do to keep your family safe. This is Uncontained, a KTVU Fox 2 wildfire special. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Savage here on the campus of Sonoma State University, where this brand new exhibit recently opened documenting last year's fires here in Northern California. It features the work of community members, artists, and first responders. We'll have more on this exhibit coming up later in the show. But we begin tonight in one of the communities hardest hit by last year's fires, Santa Rosa. Christina Rendon takes a look at where that city stands 1 year later.
Santa Rosa is resilient. Santa Rosa has great spirit.
Santa Rosa Mayor Chris Coursey says it's been a roller coaster year since flames rolled through the city, destroying businesses, homes, and lives.
In the general sense, I think we're ahead of where we thought we would be in a year, but I can't say that without remembering all the conversations that I have on a day-to-day basis with people who are struggling. As you know, we lost more than 3,000 homes, and that's 3,000 families with 3,000 different stories, and not everyone is doing great.
If you look, you can find the scars. There are roughly 1,100 homes either under permit or under construction here, but some families can't rebuild.
High cost of reconstruction is a big thing. Underinsurance is a big thing.
In the Fountain Grove neighborhood, some properties are farther along than others. Some have the structure built up, others sit as empty lots, but the rebuilding of housing is much better compared to businesses.
Well, some of the restaurants have rebuilt. And other restaurants have come in.
Kevin Rumble, CEO of the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber, says there are signs of hope. The chamber is helping to connect businesses to funding sources and federal and state resources as they go through the insurance process. Still, empty, scarred lots remain in shopping centers. The Trader Joe's is under construction, and a spokesman for the Hilton Sonoma Wine Country says they expect to redevelop the hotel on the same site in the near future.
We are just a year in, and while that's a huge milestone, with a disaster this destructive and this terrible, it's going to take time.
Tourism is down, Rumble says, as a result of the misconception by out-of-towners that all of Northern California is or has been on fire.
That we are open for business, and we have been since the fire.
When you talk to people on the street, what do they tell you?
They tell me good things that are happening to them.
Coursey tells us while the Tubbs fire is never out of the minds of those at City Hall, nor the victims it touched, the city is moving forward.
You know, every day we've got more people who are moving back into their houses. This is a community where people want to be, they want to stay.
When last year's fires swept through Santa Rosa and Sonoma County, an entire region was left stunned. Many wondering how fires could move that fast and leave so many people trapped. And many people believe the destructive nature of those fires was something unusual. But in many ways, across California, this year has been just as bad. Here's where we stand right now. 2018 is turning out to be another record-setting year when it comes to wildfires. So far, 5,847 fires have burned in our state, scorching more than 1.3 million acres. The largest of those fires was the Mendocino complex, which started on July 27th and consisted of 2 fires in Colusa, Lake, Mendocino, and Glenn counties. Together, they burned more than 459,000 acres. The ranch fire took more than a month to contain, while the river fire took almost 2 months to reach 100% containment. One of the most devastated regions was Redding, where 1,650 homes burned in July and 7 people were killed, including a woman and her 2 grandchildren. Unfortunately, these numbers don't seem surprising compared to the past couple of years. KTVU's Tom Bakar has a stunning look at how wildfires have exploded in California.
The people who've been doing this for years and years have not seen the type of fire behavior or the size of fires that we're having at the moment.
Bob Villette, a CAL FIRE tanker pilot for 37 years, says nowadays fires have gone mad.
I have not seen fires burning like this in my entire career.
From 1988 to 2017, 3 decades, in round numbers, California wildfires have averaged 573 total acres a year, about 900 square miles. In 4 of those years, 99, 07, 08, and last year, we lost more than 1 million acres, with 2008 the worst, with almost 1.6 million acres. With hot and windy October to go, plus November in Northern California and December included in Southern California, 2018 looks to set a dubious new record.
If you look at a lot of the large destructive fires in California history, they tend to be late season and they tend to be wind driven. Our fuel moisture, so the actual amount of moisture that's in our plants and trees and stuff, is below where we saw it last year at historical lows. So we're below what we've even seen in the past.
A decade ago, a 100,000 acre fire was a very unusual event. Today, 200,000 acres, common. 300,000 noteworthy, 400,000 is big, and we're better at fighting fires these days. Today, California is home to 130 million plus dead and dying trees thanks to drought, pests, and disease. In many places, the density of trees, brush, and grass unburned for decades are at 50-year highs.
Those trees are basically just standing logs once they die. And once a fire gets established in those sorts of areas, it can lead to more rapid growth.
Though by far not the only factor, CAL FIRE says climate change figures into all of this.
What a lot of our meteorologists and fire behavior analysts are experiencing now, and a lot of the science is backing up, is not only are we getting higher daytime temperatures, which obviously leads to more explosive growth, we're seeing higher nighttime temperatures. And the reason that's important is because fuels are not getting the moisture recovery that they did in the past, and firefighters have less of an opportunity to really get containment at night.
A literal army of firefighters, more than 14,000 strong, is needed from all over California, the nation, and overseas.
That's the most firefighters ever deployed in California at one time. Every percent containment you see in these fires literally is thousands of hours of men and women hours to get that 1% containment.
Looking to the future, expect better management of the forests and new technologies to help firefighters facing the belly of the beast. New mapping, information, and communication systems are already being installed wirelessly, connected to a network of 22 emergency control centers statewide.
Installed each of our CAL FIRE's vehicles, initial attack vehicles, so fire engines, dozers, hand crews, and chief officer vehicles, and allows us in the command center to see where all those resources are.
Situational awareness terminals in every fire apparatus, and that's literally to get every fire engine on the same plane. The same maps, the same frequencies, the same playing field, the same weather reports, the same fuel moisture data, and to be able to see where each other is on the fires.
So any updates on access, structures threatened, that information is received to those resources immediately versus waiting for airtime and then describing that on the radio.
CAL FIRE also has 3-dimensional simulators that allow control centers to see where the fire may go so that firefighters can be deployed in advance. Another project with the National Guard will employ sophisticated infrared sensor-equipped drones. Yet another project will convert surplus, heavy military C-130 transport planes to add to CAL FIRE's fleet of tankers.
CAL FIRE is also dealing with a pilot shortage. CAL FIRE's safety rules require pilots to rest after maxing out their hours. And in September, the agency told us it was having to ground as many as 6 firefighting aircraft at a time due to a shortage of pilots. A growing number of pilots are retiring, but there are also other factors.
What we used to have, what we called winter maintenance, is no longer there since we're fighting fire year-round. So not only do we have to look at getting our pilots rested and maintained for safety, also we have to make sure our aircraft are maintained.
Despite the shortage, CAL FIRE says it has not hampered their ability to respond to major fires. As CAL FIRE shifts tactics, many are wondering, how do we pay for all this? I talked with former FEMA coordinator Mark Nouveau about the cost of fighting these fires now and in the future.
We know that there's only $11 million as of today left in the firefighting budget, and we haven't even hit prime fire season for California. The chief of CAL FIRES requested another $234 million to try and battle these fires after already spending about $300 million. So if the estimate holds for this year alone, we'll probably spend close to $1 billion in firefighting costs.
As a state, though, it sounds like what you're saying is that moving forward, we're going to have to allocate more money for CAL FIRE. Absolutely.
Without
How
question.
much more?
Hard to say because we don't know what the fire looks like. What we do is we budget based upon historical norms. That's why you see in this case we were short, because we've never seen fires to this severity. And so now we're in a situation where, do we start to budget based upon the worst fire season we have seen to date in terms of not numbers, but amount of acreage?
When it comes to who pays, many people feel PG&E should also be held responsible. On the night the Tubbs fire burned through Santa Rosa, there were nearly a dozen reports of downed power lines in that region. In July, the city of Santa Rosa filed suit against PG&E. The lawsuit alleges that PG&E failed to exercise safety and maintenance precautions and protocols and showed a willful and conscious disregard of public safety. The utility says it is now reviewing that lawsuit. And we do want to point out that the cause of the Tubbs fire is still under investigation. Lawsuits or not, PG&E has definitely shifted how it manages wildfires. This year, the utility started warning people that their power could be shut off if they live in areas that are prone to fires, and that includes the Oakland Hills. Christina Rendon takes a look at how this safety program will work.
Emails and letters are being sent to PG&E customers in high fire areas, informing them their power may get shut off if there's an extreme weather event like a wildfire. It will affect 500,000 customers who live in Tier 2 and Tier 3 areas, shaded in orange and red.
That's a good idea. Our home burned down in the Oakland fire, so I'm very happy to have you do whatever is necessary to stop these things from happening.
This is the first time PG&E will proactively shut off power as part of their new public safety power shutoff program. The announcement follows last October's deadly wildfires in the North Bay. CAL FIRE says trees falling down onto PG&E power lines sparked some of those fires, including the Atlas fire in Napa County.
And if the threat arises, if we foresee the conditions are there that we need to shut off the power, we will let customers know 48 hours in advance of possibly shutting off the power, and then again 24 hours in advance.
Simply de-energizing the lines is not going to fix the wildfire problem by itself.
Mark Toney with the Utility Reform Network says they want to make sure PG&E knows it is their responsibility to keep people safe if they do put people in the dark.
Our concern is that they proactively identify people who are medically vulnerable and making sure that families with infants, families with people who are elderly, people who are on medical equipment, that they are identified and a plan is made for them.
PG&E says they have a hub to monitor wildfire risks. The combination of strong winds, low humidity, and critically dry vegetation could prompt a temporary turnoff, and the utility company would work with public safety authorities to do so.
It is a decision of last resort. It is only extreme circumstances. It's not a decision that we're going to take lightly, because we know how our customers depend on electricity and what the ramifications of turning off the electricity mean.
Better to know than to have something happen and then be out of power for who knows how long.
If you do receive one of these notices, PG&E is encouraging you to go online and update your profile. That way you can determine if you'd like to be notified either by text, call, or email.
Still ahead, you don't have to live up north to be impacted by our recent wildfires. Some homeowners in the Bay Area are being dropped by their insurance companies. Could you be next? And what the state recommends you do.
In September of 2015, fire ravaged Lake County's Middletown. We came back all these years later to see what's happened.
And if you think you can outrun a fire, think again. Depending on the terrain and wind speed, wildfires can spread fast. Some can move as fast as 10 miles per hour. At that speed, a fire could travel 900 feet or one city block in about a minute. We'll be right back. Welcome back. With increased fire risk, more and more homeowners in the Oakland Hills are receiving notices that their fire insurance is not being renewed. KTVU's Rob Roth spoke with the California Insurance Commissioner about what homeowners can do to get coverage for wildfires.
For the past 15 years, Fred Perkins has lived here in the Oakland Hills, taking meticulous care of his home. But without warning, he says he recently received this letter from his insurance company, Liberty Mutual.
So the property poses an unacceptable risk for wildfire.
Informing him it won't be renewing his fire insurance.
You know, after 15 years, I was just very surprised.
Perkins was not living here in October of 1991, but his was among the more than 3,000 homes incinerated in the Oakland Hills firestorm.
I don't think it's fair. I think they should, at a minimum, come to the property, examine the property, and tell me what the issues are.
Perkins is among a growing number of homeowners in the East Bay who are seeing their fire insurance being canceled. California Insurance Commissioner records show a 15% increase in cancellations in the Oakland Hills between 2015 and 2016, the most recent data available.
They're updating their models, and they're concluding that some homes are just too risky to continue to write insurance for, and so they're either non-renewing or declining to write new insurance.
Insurance Commissioner Dave Jones says it's not yet a crisis, but it is a growing problem in areas where neighborhoods meet wildlands.
We've discovered that these models don't include the sorts of things that homeowners are doing to reduce the risk of fire to their home. So they don't include, for example, the fact that you're using roof materials to make your roof impervious to embers.
Those who lose insurance can check with other carriers, and as a last resort, people can get insurance through the state's so-called FAIR plan. Perkins has obtained an insurance broker to help him.
If you play this out the way it sounds, virtually everybody could lose their insurance.
Many believe global warming and climate change are the underlying cause of California's frenzied fire season. Droughts have killed off trees, and warmer temperatures have made these fires more difficult to fight. KTVU's Tom Vakar explains why a majority of scientists now agree climate change is very real.
Before there were modern-thinking humans, there was naturally occurring carbon dioxide, CO2, in the atmosphere, mostly from rotting vegetation, lightning-caused fires, and volcanoes. Now, CO2 is the most plentiful, long-lasting, and dangerous greenhouse gas. It traps and holds heat in the atmosphere for a few decades to many centuries. In the last 200 years, humankind's industrial presence has gone worldwide, releasing massive amounts of CO2, more than the atmosphere can handle.
The fact is that humans are changing the climate on a scale of years to decades for things that otherwise took hundreds of thousands to millions of years.
Dr. Dan Kamen is a professor of energy at UC Berkeley's Energy Resources Group. He's a firm believer in global warming and climate change.
3/4 of CO2, carbon dioxide, is from burning fossil fuels in power plants and in cars, and 1/4 is from land use change.
This NASA CO2 chart from Earth and ice records going back 400,000 years shows the enormity of the buildup of CO2 in just the last century.
Burning fossil fuels, burning coal, oil, natural gas. And about 1/4 of our carbon dioxide comes from burning down vegetation when we clear forests for agriculture or for strip malls or housing projects.
Kamen says humans have never seen CO2 this high.
We have seen levels 5 million years ago when CO2 was much higher.
Kamen says recent human activity has doubled the amount of heat-trapping CO2 in the atmosphere, raising the Earth's average temperature by about 2 degrees.
We do know that some incredibly scary changes are coming. They lead to everything from heat above which certain crops won't grow, to temperatures above which we're going to get much less movement of water in the ocean, turning essentially parts of the ocean into big stagnant ponds.
And, says Professor Kamen, the wave of increasing, ever larger CO2 spewing wildfires, which is aggravated by climate change, is erasing a lot of California's considerable progress in reducing greenhouse gases.
Those big fires can actually offset all of the reductions for a given year in California until that vegetation grows back.
I was a skeptic.
UC Berkeley physics professor emeritus Richard Muller criticized global warming and climate change for many years, but the data on CO2 changed his mind.
Global warming is real, and it's caused by humans. This is absolutely solid.
With the Earth already 2 degrees warmer, Dr. Muller's Earth science team believes that the temperature will rise yet another 2 degrees in the next 50 years.
Now we're getting into a temperature realm that is significantly warmer than civilization has experienced.
That's important because the Ice Age, which modern civilizations have never experienced, happened when the average global temperature dipped just 10 degrees.
On the world scale, when you have climate changes, areas that were fertile become barren, and the opposite happens. This tends to lead to conflict.
Where Muller parts ways with many scientists who believe in climate change is when they overstate, overhype, and overblow the speed and severity of the changes climate change will bring.
I think it is irresponsible for a scientist to exaggerate. I don't think survivability is at issue here. I don't think humans are the most adaptable animals that the Earth has ever seen. We will adapt.
All right, so Tom, most of the scientists seem to be in agreement about climate change. How realistic is it to think at this juncture that we can reverse the trends we're seeing?
At this juncture, there's no magic bullet. If we stopped all of our putting carbon dioxide in the air today, a lot of that carbon dioxide that will last for decades, if not hundreds of years, is still going to result in global warming. So we can expect the Earth to get a little bit warmer. And while 2 degrees doesn't seem like much on any given day, over an average period of time, it has enormous impacts on the environment and people and the ability to raise crops and all these other things that are very, very hard to solve.
What is the evidence? What's the connection that we see, and how do we show that climate change is causing these more destructive fires that we're seeing here in our state?
There's nothing that's solid gold proof. But look at this. In the last 10 or 15 years, the biggest fires we've ever had, certainly within the last 15 years, have happened in California, and we're going to set a record probably this year. And the reason that that's happening is because the temperature is slightly warmer, which means it's warmer when it burns. The nights don't get quite as cool, which makes it harder to contain them. And the whole situation basically is that we've had drought, and some people attribute parts of the drought to the heating of the earth.
Let's talk about those trees, because a lot of people talk about the fuel load. We hear firefighters talk about that a lot, and that's what leads to these fires causing so much more damage and burning so many more acres. What are the solutions when it comes to those dead and dying trees in our state? What can we do?
Well, what we're going to have to do, whether we like it or not, and some folks don't like this because of the destruction of habitat, we're going to have to manage these forests better. When trees and things are dead, we have to take them out of there so it's just not fuel sitting there. Now think about this, 60% of Lake County has already burned, 60%. Incredible. But there's still 40% more that's got dead trees and everything else. That county, as bad as it suffered, is not necessarily out of the woods, nor are any of the other counties in the entire state of California from north to south.
So the solutions when it comes to climate change, you touched on some of the big ones, and some of them are going to be somewhat controversial.
Yeah, they are going to be controversial. I mean, there's a definite feeling that nuclear power is a dangerous thing, but what's more dangerous? Safer nuclear power plants or an Earth that's heating to the degree that we could have conflicts because certain territories will no longer be fertile and things like that. These are hard decisions to make, but you have to look at this kind of like a very, very, very large oil spill. We respond to those, and we respond in great numbers, and we try to get rid of as much of the damage as possible. We have to start doing that now, and that comes from driving less. That comes from doing a lot fewer things that contribute to the contributions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And if we don't do that, then we're simply going to keep adding to an already bad situation.
Still ahead tonight, 2 communities hit hard by wildfires. We'll visit Middletown in Lake County that witnessed devastation 3 years ago, while our Christina Rendon checks in on Coffey Park 1 year later.
The landscape is healing and the community is too, as families prepare
prepare to move back into their rebuilt homes.
Plus, the average wildfire can reach temperatures of 1,400 degrees or more. That's as hot as lava. And at those temperatures, a wildfire can melt aluminum and damage steel. One of the hardest hit areas of Santa Rosa last year was Coffey Park. Hundreds of homes burned there and thousands of people are still displaced. But as KTVU's Christina Rendon shows us, many families are eager to move back in.
Coffey Park in Santa Rosa isn't the same neighborhood it used to be. The Tubbs fire stripped families of all they own last October. Now, nearly a year later, blocks of destruction have turned into blocks of construction. Margaret Curzon's parents are rebuilding on Hopper Avenue.
I moved in here when I was 4 years old in 1990 with my family. This was our first house.
Move-in is set for January 2019.
Hearing all the construction noises and sounds and just seeing all the houses going up, it just, it feels really good, and it brings a lot of hope.
Dave Leal is keeping the same layout for his family's home on Santiago Drive.
You know, 6 months ago it still looked like a bombing area, and now it looks like a new subdivision.
He plans to live in an RV on his property during construction.
And upon completion, just walk out of one structure and into the other.
And John and Dominique Sampson will soon be back on Tulip Tree Road.
We always had a red door. The wife, it was one of the requirements of the new home. She wanted her red door.
The Sampsons are aiming to move into their new home on October 8th, the one-year anniversary of the Tubbs fire.
It's just going to feel so good to come back home. You know, our 13-year-old daughter is saying, I want to move, she says, you know, I want to go. And I said, we're almost there, honey.
Here's the guest bedroom and the guest bath.
John Sampson says crews with Urban Equity Builders are in the final stages, putting the finishing touches on this 3-bedroom, 3-bath house, complete with the required fire suppression system. It will be bigger than the home that burned.
Anxious to get in here and get it done, get back on my couch, get my girls in there where they belong, and, you know, get this part behind us.
The process has been a challenging journey for all the families, whether it was securing a permit, turning in necessary paperwork, or making numerous phone calls to get money from their mortgage companies.
Farmers Insurance was wonderful. They paid us out fully, boom, but it goes to the mortgage company because they have the lien on the property. So trying to get the funds from them has been difficult.
And you get over these little hurdles one at a time, and the hurdles get a little higher, and as you get over them, you get stronger. And you realize that, yeah, you know what, we're going to pull through this.
It's that kind of resilience that's known around here as Coffey Strong. Leal recently got word his mortgage company will finally be paying in full. He says despite everything that's happened, they feel blessed.
I feel like everyone's just come together as a community and just, you know, bonded and just, you know, everyone's rebuilding.
Rebuilding and reestablishing a new community. The houses are different, but the families here are the same. This is where their heart is and where they want their home to be. This is Coffey Park.
It just hit me when I stood there in my kitchen and said, this is my home. This is, you know, we're coming back soon, and looking outside and still seeing all the burnt trees, and it's just sad. It's overwhelming in a wonderful way too, just to see people's lives coming back together. So this is kind of more a happy, emotional cry.
While Coffey Park is slowly coming back to life, another community in the North Bay has had a much different outcome. 3 years ago, fire ravaged Lake County, killing 4 people. KTVU's Tom Vakar joins us once again to show us what life is like now in Middletown.
The September Valley Fire occurred in 2015, ravaging the unincorporated town of Middletown, taking with it 1,322 homes and 27 apartment buildings. In fact, Lake County has suffered 8 major fires in the last 3 years.
It's a new game in California with the potential for these wildfires.
The Lake County administrator was the recovery coordinator for the fire.
About a third of our homeowners were uninsured, and that has posed challenges for people in having the capacity to rebuild.
Approximately 16% of the homes that were destroyed have been rebuilt. Approximately 17% more are currently in the rebuilding process.
So after all these years, only 1 out of 3 homes has either been rebuilt or is in the process of being rebuilt. And that means many lots like this, 2/3 of the homes, have not been rebuilt, and some may never be.
It's really going to take a generation, I think, for a county like Lake to come back from the magnitude of all of these disasters.
According to the 2010 census, Middletown had 1,323 residents the last time the population was counted. Today, no one really knows how many live here.
We're hoping that the census of 2020 will show us something about that, but there's really no way to track how many people just gave up and left.
A lot of them sold their lots, moved out. Some of them just left without even selling the lot. They just left.
A fair amount left. You know, after the fire, they decided they didn't want to rebuild here, and then they would go.
One thing's for sure, the property tax base has shrunk substantially, and needed services to all residents in the county has been reduced.
It's been a tremendous loss in our property tax revenues here in Lake County. The county has taken an enormous hit, but also just the draw of tourism from out of the area has been slowed, because to the outside world it sounds as if all of Lake County has burned.
Since many homeowners had no insurance, the county has come up with an idea: lower the required footprint for a home from its current 720 feet.
We are moving forward with a reduction down to 360 square feet. So we're hoping with that reduction we may see an increase in rebuilding.
It's been a very tough firestorm-plagued 3 years.
We've lost approximately 2,000 homes, which equates to about 5.5% of our total housing stock in Lake County, and the amount of our land mass, more than 60% of it has burned during those years. There is a lot of trauma and stress among the citizens of Lake County with these fires.
Nonetheless,
it's a great community, especially for children, and raising your kids here. I mean, everybody knows each other.
When people in Middletown and Coffee Park were told to evacuate, they only had a few moments to get out. Do you know what you'd take with you? What CAL FIRE says you should have ready to go in a moment's notice. When a large wildfire is burning out of control, we often hear the term firestorm, and we've even seen massive fire tornadoes. As KTVU's Mark Tamayo explains, under certain conditions, fire can make weather unpredictable.
When a fire starts, we instantly look at the weather conditions to determine how the conditions could impact the fire behavior. We look at temperature, relative humidity, how much moisture is in the air, and the winds. And of course, the winds are a key component to let us know how fast a fire can grow. Now, here's a look at a hypothetical weather pattern. An area of high pressure out here in the Pacific, out here to our west. An area of low pressure down towards Southern California. As air rushes out of that high pressure center down to that low pressure center, that sets up a northerly flow, a northerly wind. So the air is moving from the north to the south. If the fire were to develop within this pattern, it too would move from the north to the south. But sometimes wildfires, especially the real intense ones, can create their own weather pattern, and that is a firestorm. Typically at the surface you need this: very hot temperatures, maybe up above 100 degrees, very dry conditions, relative humidity could be in the single digits. The combination sets up an environment where the trees, the grasses, the brush, they are ready to burn, and they are ready to burn rapidly. Now here is a cross-section, a profile of a fire showing you this. The hot air rising, that creates a vertical updraft. That's why those arrows are moving up. At the surface, an area of low pressure develops. So this is a sequence of events that continues, and the next step is very important because that area of low pressure at the surface is almost like a funnel or a vacuum. It sucks in the wind, and that indraft wind could be very strong, maybe upwards of 40, maybe 50, maybe 60 miles an hour. So the fire is creating its own wind pattern. So the main takeaways: the fire can grow rapidly, it can actually fan out in multiple directions, and sometimes we have a fire tornado with winds in excess of 140 miles an hour. This presents a very complex and a very dangerous situation for fire crews. So while the surrounding weather conditions may tell one story, the weather conditions along the fire front itself could be completely different.
Thanks, Mark. Earlier this year, PG&E unveiled a new state-of-the-art operations center in San Francisco. The purpose? To track weather conditions and try to prevent fires before they start. KTVU's Tom Vakar shows us how it works.
Though Pacific Gas and Electric is no stranger to wildfires, the wine country firestorms were a shock to the utility in what it now describes as the new climate normal, drier and hotter. In May, PG&E opened up a sophisticated high-tech wildfire safety operations center that'll be looking for potential fires before they begin and fighting them when they do flare up.
We have experts in here that are going to be staffing this room 24/7, from meteorology to engineering to safety to electric operations.
More people will be out in the territory, including a privately hired 25 fire engine-equipped PG&E fire department.
We're going to have boots on the ground, professionals that, including our crews as well as fire professionals, to understand conditions on the ground, to feed that information back into this Wildfire Safety Operations Center.
We've got dry conditions out there, so we're going to be very proactive. We're going to be out there in the service areas, making sure that we can pick up any fires when they start small.
To pinpoint the greatest likely flash points, PG&E is deploying an army of robotic weather stations in the most fire-prone areas. They'll measure key fire dangers, dryness of potential fuels, humidity, and the most critical, wind speed, and report all of those conditions back instantaneously.
We have 5 of those right now out in the territory. We'll have 50 more by June, and by the end of the year we'll have close to 200, if not a little bit more.
Though the wine country fires garnered our attention because of the extreme fire areas up here in wine country, the reality is when you go down, you look even in the Central Bay Area, there are plenty of extreme fire danger locations. And that means that a fire like the North Bay could happen almost anywhere. Since high winds can blow sparking power lines down or blow trees into them, PG&E will cut power in areas where conditions threaten to do just that. CAL FIRE is still investigating if PG&E lines blown down by winds or knocked down by trees started the fire.
When conditions on the ground are so severe that the risk of a fire starting and the risk of it spreading is so severe that as a last resort, shutting down the power makes sense.
How much this will help is still unknown. But more sensors, more field crews, more firefighters, and more technical ability to react more quickly is sure to be tested sooner than later.
If a wildfire did threaten your home, would you be ready? CAL FIRE says you should remember the 6 P's: people and pets, papers, including phone numbers and other important documents, prescriptions, don't forget eyeglasses, pictures and other irreplaceable items, personal computer. Don't worry about the monitor and keyboard. Just grab the hard drive and other storage devices. And finally, plastic, credit cards, ATM cards, and cash. Experts also say you should create an evacuation plan with your family and practice it.
We recommend people should practice their disaster plan at least twice a year. A great time to remember to do that is during fall back and spring forward. Check your smoke alarms and practice your disaster plan. By practicing it, you ensure that everybody has the muscle memory, you know what to do, but by talking about it, you're all clear about where you're supposed to go, where you're supposed to meet. Thinking about your family and their changing needs. So by practicing your disaster plan twice a year, it gives you the opportunity. Do you now have pets you did not have before? Do people have medical needs that they did not have before? And so it just really gives you an opportunity to think about, could I survive on my own for 5 to 7 days? And that's just the critical, having that discussion with your family is just critically important.
There are a lot of other great tips that can get you prepared on CAL FIRE's website. The URL is readyforwildfire.org. The site has an app you can download on Android and Apple. It has information on what to put in your emergency supply kit and what you can do before a wildfire strikes. Again, that's readyforwildfire.org. We've also put a link on our website, ktvu.com. Still ahead, a place to heal and reflect. We'll take you through this new art exhibit on display here at the Sonoma State Library, documenting last year's fires. And you'll hear from the university's president, who shares her deeply personal story about escaping the flames. Plus, ever wonder how much water those CAL FIRE air tankers can hold? The DC-10 can hold about 11,000 gallons. And the giant 747 can carry 19,000 gallons. That may seem like a lot, but an Olympic-sized swimming pool holds 660,000 gallons of water, so one of those 747s would have to make 34 drops before filling an Olympic pool. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here at Sonoma State University inside an exhibit that's on display in the main library 1 year after the North Bay fires. And I'm joined now by Judy Ceccacci, president of Sonoma State University. Thanks for being with us. Talk to me about the significance of the After the Fire exhibit that we are sitting in.
We have 21 artists who contributed works to this exhibit that is here for all the community to experience, to remember, to be grateful for what we have, and to be able to reflect on where we are at this point.
What are some of the pieces that stand out to you?
You know, all of the pieces are so special. They're all in different mediums. The one with the charred fork and spoon speaks to me. And I think as a victim of the fire, there were so few things that we could salvage from our lots. The metals and a few clay pieces that seemed to withstand fire seemed to survive. And so that particular piece, it reminds me of my parents, my mother's silverware set that I found a few pieces.
It's always incredible what survives during these fires. Why did you want to, as a university, to curate this exhibit?
The university is a gathering place. It's a part of our community. And we wanted a place for people to come, to be able to get together, to share experiences, and to remember. And our faculty and staff helped put this together, came up with the idea, and brought these beautiful pieces together in this space.
And now it is a place to reflect
on
what happened 1 year ago. With that being said, you, I know, have done a lot of reflecting over the past year because, as you alluded to, you are a victim of the fires that broke out in the North Bay. You lost your home in the fires. You and your husband very nearly lost your lives.
Correct.
What do you remember about that morning?
You know, it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had in my life. But I wasn't the only one. You know, we had 80 faculty, staff, and students that also lost their home. It affected our entire community, and that's why having this exhibit is so important, because the university is a part of the community, and we can help to bring people together, to heal, to remember, and to be able to look forward and move on.
You woke up to your smoke alarm.
Yes.
In your home in Fountain Grove.
Yes, 4:03 in the morning. The smoke detector in our bedroom went off, and I thought the electricity had just gone off. Walked down the hall, and flames were already in the front door, and screamed for my husband to get up. And we thought it was just our home on fire. And we ran out of our front door, well, opened the door, and it was just an inferno. And we thought when we ran through that and jumped off our flaming porch that we would be safe. We thought it was just our home. But we looked around, and trees and all the homes on our street were already engulfed in flames. We just started running. We were barefoot. We ended up with just the clothes on our back, which for me was my bathrobe, and we ran, literally quite running for our lives. And we were very fortunate after running almost a mile to see some dim headlights, and it was an off-duty firefighter who happened to, he also lost his home, Tony Neal, amazing person, and Drew Peterson. They took a last run up Fountain Grove, and we were so fortunate and grateful that they found us.
What would have happened if you hadn't crossed paths with those two firefighters?
Well, they said that 1 minute more and we would have been victims 45 and 46 in the fires, which was quite hard to hear. So just as we jumped in their car, and they teased me because when I flung the door open, and they couldn't see us because the smoke was so thick, they said it was my screams that alerted them, and I don't remember screaming. I asked them if their car was fireproof because I worried that with all the explosions that the car would just explode once we got in. Yeah. And right after we jumped in, the fire up the street that we were running on both sides, it converged, and we just got in time. So
just like that.
Just like that.
Up next, the Tubbs fire ripped through a small school in the North Bay. Now, almost a year later, the teachers and students are back at the school. And while much has changed, some of the best parts of the school are just the same. Welcome back. They lost their school in last year's Tubbs fire and had to spend the school year at a small church in Santa Rosa. But now the students and staff are back on the grounds of Redwood Adventist Academy. As KTVU's Mark Tamayo shows us, the Academy family is now back together, but things are far from normal.
The distinct sounds of school back in session. From the playground,
they began pressing the crowd away from the gate.
To reading time,
he had that same sleepy look.
My hand.
To working on the farm.
There's one right here.
These students are returning to their old school and starting a very new experience without traditional classrooms or lockers.
I was angry at the fire.
The strong emotions from this fourth grader are directed toward last October's Tubbs fire. Redwood Adventist Academy sits on Mark West Springs Road in Santa Rosa, and it was in the direct path of the wind-driven firestorm. The burn scars on the surrounding trees symbolize both the loss and recovery of this school.
I try and think about what it used to look like a lot, just so that when I'm older I don't forget.
The campus she remembers has been an anchor in this community since 1973. The 22-acre property once housed 14 classrooms, a gymnasium, and a computer lab. All were destroyed. The serene school that students walked away from on a Friday would be no more the following Monday.
The text just said our school is gone, and I saw the pictures where my classroom was, and just charred buildings, some wall, not so much as a stapler, anything left in my room. The fire was so bad here.
Elisa Campbell was once a student here. Now she teaches 3rd and 4th grade. After the fire, her team was forced to make a sudden change, moving the kids to a small church in Santa Rosa. While the conditions were not ideal, the group powered through the rest of the academic year. This play area is one of the few structures to survive the devastating firestorm. Since then, a gradual recovery has been happening. But returning to this campus to start off a new school year, it's a big step in the right direction. From a small makeshift classroom to an open field, the students are excited to be back on the school's farm.
So what we're doing to clean the garlic.
Joby Oft manages the farm program. He, along with the students, can grow over 700 different types of fruits and vegetables. On this Tuesday morning, the class was planting garlic.
Now that we're back, I think we're finally starting to feel like we can breathe, get back out in nature, get our farm program back up and going.
The new modular classrooms arrived in July and are positioned next to safety fencing, the area where classrooms once stood.
So this is our new home until our new structures are rebuilt.
Empty portables were transformed into their new home. It may look like a normal classroom, but there are still occasional reminders of what was lost.
I still once in a while will reach to grab something out of a cupboard or think I have a resource that I don't.
Students from pre-K to grade 12 once attended this school. For now, high school operations have been suspended. Registration has dropped from 130 on opening day last year to 55 right now. There is already a draft plan to rebuild.
We would like to be able to open in at least phase 1 of our new campus August 2020. So they would like to have something where they're breaking ground very soon.
Whether it is a new state-of-the-art school or one that still has burn scars today, the kids are learning a valuable lesson.
No matter what happens, you have to push forward and not let things take you back.
New life is starting to emerge in surprising ways. These stacked trees that were damaged in the fire will soon be milled and transformed into new tables for the students to work on. Change once resulted in sadness for these kids. Today, there are more smiles as they push forward.
What's it been like so far?
It's been good, yeah. I like the school, so.
I could tell in the first 2 days of the school year that the energy's great. We have a great group. They're excited to be here. So we're small, but we're powerful, and we're going to come back strong.
Thanks for joining us tonight. The 10 o'clock news starts in just moments. But before we go, we want to leave you with some of the more inspiring images of the recent tragedies here in Northern California, pictures of our first responders and the communities they serve. Have a good night.
They saved the houses here on our street, and we would really like to thank them.